Emotions are like early warning radars. You have an emotion, there's something you need to pay attention to.
Great technique, I always like to say, this goes back to my Air Force days, is we used to have this technique of hack the clock. First thing you do, hack the clock.
And what we're doing is making that process visible and something you can engage with.
Coming to you from a hangar somewhere near the flight line, where a new FBO's opened up and they got a great deal on a case of oil, this is the Future in Flight podcast. I'm your host, Shawn Staerker. Today we're live, or at least we were live, at AeroSummit 2026 down in Aventura, Florida. And I'm going to tell you, this event delivered industry leaders, flight school operators, CFIs, founders, dreamers, all in one room, all pushing aviation forward. But here's what nobody tells you about events like this. The real gold, it doesn't just happen on the main stage. It also happens in the hallways, in the conversations that stretch 20 minutes past when they were supposed to end, in the moments when somebody says something that hits you so hard, you have to stop and write it down. We had a lot of those moments, and we caught many of them on tape. For this episode of Live from AeroSummit, we're sitting down with Tammy Barlette, A-10 pilot, MQ-9 operator, and founder of Crosscheck Mental Performance. She's going to talk to us about the one thing they never put in the training manual, what's going on inside your own head. Then, Brandon Williams joins us, F-15E Strike Eagle pilot, airline captain, and HumanFactors expert, to break down why we make the mistakes we make, and how something called debrief culture might be the single greatest performance unlock that most GA pilots have never touched. And finally, she's back, Adriana Barrigan of FlyORKA. You've heard her on the show before, and she's been busy. The app has leveled up, and she's got something to say about what's actually draining your flight training budget. 3 conversations, 1 common thread. Your mind is the cockpit. Let's get right into it. Tammy Barlette didn't wake up one day and decide she wanted to be a pilot. She was asked. She was an Air Force ROTC at the University of Minnesota, already planning to serve her country, when someone looked at her and said, "Would you like to be a pilot?" She thought about it for 3 whole seconds. "Yeah," she said. "That sounds incredible." 3 seconds. That's all it took. From that moment, she went on to fly T-38s, A-10s, Q-1s, and MQ-9s, accumulating the kind of experience most pilots only read about. She taught at a weapons school. She had cervical spine reconstruction and found her way back to a high-G environment anyway. And somewhere in all of that, she noticed something that no flight manual had ever covered. The real barrier to performance wasn't in the cockpit. It was in the mind. That realization became Crosscheck Mental Performance, a program she built to help aviators manage pressure, recover from mistakes, and build the kind of confidence that actually holds up when things go sideways at altitude. She teaches it to pilots, to corporations, and to anyone willing to do the work. Tammy Barlette, welcome into the Future in Flight podcast. Welcome back into the Future in Flight podcast. Coming from AeroSummit 2026, where the best and brightest in aviation have shown up. And we have had some incredible sessions. We've had some incredible conversations. The conversations after the conversations really have been meaningful. And we are going to have an incredible conversation with somebody doing something really awesome. We're going to talk about the incredible name of her business, how it's aviation related. Talk about a little of her history, which is incredibly exciting. But most importantly, we're going to talk about what she's doing in the aviation world right now in general aviation and talking to people about how they can address some factors and increase their performance a little bit. So I want to welcome in Tammy Barlette. She is a HumanFactors expert. We're going to talk a little bit about what those might be, educate somebody, and then educate them maybe how they can identify some factors or traits that maybe they can improve. I know for myself, there were some glaring personal defects that really kept me out of the cockpit for a while, and it was things that could have been, quite truthfully, easily addressed. We'll talk about that and get your outlook on it. But first, I want to get your outlook on AeroSummit 2026. Tammy, how's it been?
It's been awesome. I love the connection of people here, and I love just the variety of people here, and everyone's so friendly.
That's the thing about aviation is initially on its face, it can be a little bit off-putting maybe. There's a fence around the airport. Aviation is associated with high cost, which maybe is exclusive, but you get inside the gate and everybody here, there's smiling faces from end to end. This is fantastic. And value. Yeah. People driving value, like yourself. So tell us a little bit about how you got started in aviation.
Well, it's a pretty funny story, actually. I decided that I wanted to serve my country, and so I had already had some college under my belt when I graduated high school, so I didn't even look at the academies. And I went to Air Force ROTC at the University of Minnesota, and I said, okay, I want to serve my country, and this is how I'm going to do it because I want to get a degree. And the first question they asked me, which is a very common question, it makes a lot of sense, but I didn't expect it, was, well, would you like to be a pilot? And I kind of got caught off guard, even though you shouldn't. It's Air Force ROTC. That's what most people want to do. Go be a pilot. I'm going to do ROTC, right? Air Force ROTC. And I thought for probably about 3 seconds, and then I said, yeah, I want to do that. That sounds incredible. So that's how it started.
I love the your face lights up when you tell that story. It's that passion for aviation. Now, when you went in, did you find being a pilot as rewarding, as awesome as you thought at that moment when you joined up?
Yeah, I mean, and what's funny about it too is after I retired and I've been getting into GA and talking to people in GA, I had no idea what a lucky person I really was to get to go to U.S. Air Force pilot training and go upside down and spin and fly in formation, just even for the basic training you get to do that. So yeah, it was awesome. And then I went on to fly T-38s and A-10s and MQ-1s and MQ-9s, and it was just amazing. So.
You bring up a really cool point I wanted to get to, is that you've got some cool time and type, both manned and unmanned. Tell us a little bit about your perception, your takeaway of the difference of those two aircraft.
Actually, when I was in pilot training and we would get assignments, it would be like, it'd be a big presentation. So here you're getting the A-10, and we would make jokes about people. You're going to fly an unmanned plane. And we were like, ha, ha, ha. It's not so ha, ha, ha anymore because it's really happens. I literally never thought I would fly an unmanned aircraft. But things changed. So I had cervical spine reconstruction in 2006. And so at that moment, the best thing for me to do was to go unmanned. And plus I was going to get married and have kids, and it was just the best thing for me to do. When I take on a mission and do something, I don't do it halfway. So you're asking about the differences between them, right? For me, I really missed flying. I really missed formation because that's one of my favorite things to do. But it didn't matter because the mission was still effective and I was really doing something important every single day. Now, many days I was sitting there watching feed of Afghanistan or Iraq, not having a clue how this was helping someone, but I knew it was helping someone. So that mattered to me, and I took it very seriously. So.
I love that statement. I didn't know how it was helping someone, but it was helping. And that speaks to the greater role of every job in the military. Some people, their job may be less frontline, less glamorous, so to speak. Everybody is needed. Every role is crucial. Just like in aviation, everybody on the crew is an integral part of the operation. Now, let's kind of fast forward and get into how addressing human factors and human performance came into your purview.
Yeah. So let me backtrack to how this all happened first. So I got an exception to policy and went back into the high G environment after my surgery, and I flew the T-38 for the last 6.5 years of my career. And it was in that environment, because I spent a lot of years teaching. I went to weapons school and did a lot of teaching, and I love it. But what I realized is I spent a lot of time getting people out of their own mind first before I could teach them the stick and rudder skills, because it's so important. And so when I realized the content I was teaching was actually the same content athletes were being taught, high-level athletes, mental performance training for athletes. And it shifted from sports psychology to performance psychology because it applies to everyone. I started studying it and putting it all together. And I'll be honest, when I left the military, we didn't teach the stuff that I teach, and I don't think we teach exactly what I teach in the military right now anyways. They are doing a little more of the take care of the human piece of it and the mind piece of it, but I would say it's more like cognitive, aptitude and speed and that kind of stuff. And yeah, they're considering the human, but what I realize is that we need to be more proactive about ourselves and taking care of ourselves as far as our own. We got to stop blaming other people for our inadequacies, right? But also there's to flip side that people often think, well, I can't do this. I'm not sure if I can do that. That's a common thought in pilot training and aviation. A lot of people won't talk about it though, because they think they shouldn't feel like that, so they don't talk about that. And to kind of finally hone this in, people are like, what is she teaching? What is she talking about? So basically what I teach in my business is I teach people how to manage pressure, recover from mistakes, and increase confidence. Because you can have all the technical knowledge in the world about aviation, but if you can't access it under pressure, it does you zero good.
And that speaks exactly to the point I was mentioning earlier about some of the traits that I have. I really was... and still am to some degree. If I let myself, I'm a very angry person. I have anger issues. And I get angry when things happen to me, when negative things happen to me. I learned this from two ways, from martial arts training, and aviation has taught me that these things that happen, they're not personal. When an electrical failure happens, it's not a personal thing. I don't have to take that personally and react with anger. The aircraft is not disrespecting me. It's okay. And that was one of the, honestly, that's what kept me out of the cockpit for quite some time, is that I knew I was too angry to manage a system. And it's unfortunate because, like many people that want to be in aviation, that's a dream. And for something that simple to affect a dream is awful. And it sounds a lot like I'm just not the only one that has that problem. Have you seen some other problems like that?
Yeah, well, let's talk about you for a second here. So you said that you recognize that this anger, I couldn't operate systems. So first of all, you're a step above most people because you actually were aware of it. So I like to say that self-awareness is a superpower. You have to know what's going on in your side yourself. Now for you, now it's anger. Not everyone has that emotion, but I like to say that emotions are like early warning radars. You have an emotion, there's something you need to pay attention to. Okay, why am I having this emotion? Well, what am I thinking? It all comes down to what you're thinking because there's a cycle, right? And thoughts are where you can change things. And that's where you have to start, right? So you were aware that you had this problem. Some people aren't even aware of it. They don't have any idea what's going on through their mind all day long. And so one of the first things we do after the first module is I have people do a thought inventory where I tell them, I want you to pay attention to your thoughts, but we don't leave it at that because if at the end of the day, they'll be like, oh, Tammy told me to, and I didn't do it. So I tell them to set 5 alarms spaced throughout the day. And when the alarm goes off, kind of go, where's my mind been? And people are really surprised to find out that they're really a lot of times in a very negative space. You control that. You can control that. And that's where you need to start. And I mean, that's just one example, but this is all about self-awareness, how to increase your self-awareness and how to give you more control over things versus feeling like things are being done to you.
That is a great point, is that when I get angry, I give my power away. I have no more control of the situation. It's detrimental. And so that was one of the things I really had to learn, was that there are things you just have to let go. I can be mad on the ground. When I land that aircraft after the emergency, in the moment, operating, it was a barrier. And so you're unlocking barriers for people, helping them realize their dream. When did you know that you kind of had something there and that you were really pushing value into the space?
I think I knew that it was really good information to people to utilize because I'd been teaching it for so long informally. When I launched my course about 2.5 years ago, I did it because I wouldn't have done it if I didn't think it would work. But I have gotten to a point where I've seen so much effectiveness from what we've been teaching. I don't have a doubt in my mind. If you're willing to do the work, it's just like anything, you have to do it, and what you put in, you get out of it. But the results and the feedback we get are phenomenal. I had a wide body captain, or got a pilot who was upgrading to wide body, take the class just to see what it was. And they said, this is the class I never knew that I needed. It's awesome. And it's just one of those things, everything we teach in the class, it's very simple. If I pulled out one simple thing, you'd be like, oh, I can do that, I don't need the class. But you got to put it all together, and you have to put it into aviation. And that's where it makes the biggest difference.
And you have to put an attractive name on it, much like you have. Where did you? It's obviously aviation centered, but why did you land on CrossCheck?
Well, I do keynote speeches, and I like to say that you need to keep your cross-check going. Like when crap hits the fan, more often than not, people get sucked into staring at the problem, right? And they're like, oh my gosh, look at this thing. It sucks. I can't believe this thing did. And I'm like, okay, we can't do that. Like you need to keep your, quote, cross-check going, whether it's in the plane, you get stuck looking at the oil pressure and not flying the plane anymore, or if it's in life because something's bogging you down. I like to compare that to people. I say in the aircraft, we can't just stare at the oil pressure. So in life, we can't do it either. Yeah, something's sucking you into a bad place. Okay, acknowledge it. Keep your life going. And how often you come back to it and how long you stay on that issue depends on the problem. But you have to keep your cross-check of life going. You really do. It's all has to keep it all in balance.
And it's such simple advice. You mentioned taking out simple things and putting them together. Keep your cross-check in balance. And that means different things to different people, but it's just a great statement to be able to hang your hat on. If somebody has heard the interview, and they say, Tammy really knows what she's doing. And I want to check her out. Where would they go?
Well, I do have my website is crosscheckmentalperformance.com, but I have an online community. It's inside a platform called School. So that's skool.com/crosscheck. And there's a free aspect to the community where there's a discussion board. And then inside there, that's where the course lives. If people actually want to take the course, it's inside there.
And you mentioned community. That's a great place to share things that have happened to us, to debrief, so to speak. Tell us a little bit about how debrief culture, specifically in the military, can come over into not just general aviation, but in life. Give us that translation.
Oh, it's extremely important. And it's interesting because so many people don't debrief. And I actually teach this content to corporations across the country. And it shocks me to find out how many people don't debrief. It is so very, very important. Like, we don't have time to debrief. And I look at them, I say, you don't have time not to debrief unless you just don't want to ever get better. Because the stats out there are like 20 to 25% increase in performance by debriefing alone if it's done properly. But you have to know how to do it. And, but the key is, what's funny to me is when I got out of the military, I had no idea that the word accountability had a negative connotation. I was like, wait, what? I like accountability. I think it's great. And then we go into the debrief concept. And to me, as a fighter pilot, yeah, it might be fun if we skipped our debrief because I can go have lunch and just chill and just be done. But I was actually pissed if we skipped a debrief because I lost my opportunity to get better. Like, I need to know what I did wrong because it's not about me as a person. It's about me getting better. And I see that feedback as someone caring about me enough to tell me what it is I did wrong and how I can do it better, not as a judgment on me. And that's one thing, going back to my community, it's super important to me. And I say this if you watch the video coming in, it's a non-judgmental, non-criticism place. Because there's too many people in aviation that will not talk about confidence. They'll not talk about we're done not talking about it. We're going to talk about it and we're going to normalize it because you probably wouldn't be surprised at how many people when they say to me, wait, you struggle with confidence? I'm like, but you're a fighter pilot. I said, well, absolutely, I'm human. And what it does for people when you share that, hey, we all feel these things. This is how you deal with it. It's normal. They're like, oh, it's normal. Like, you got that one little, student pilot who's in some airport that only has one instructor on an airplane. They're all by themselves. They get connected in this community and they go, wow, okay, this is normal. Yeah, I'm okay. I can do this.
Knowing that somebody else has bounced a landing as well, and probably somebody that's kind of cool that you might even look up to. Like, whoa, that person bounced one. Okay, I guess I'm all right. Look where they are now. And so that does bring that confidence that helps break down the barrier to help realize a dream. Tammy, you're helping people realize their dreams. It's amazing just by learning about themselves a little bit. Give us the contact one more time for the website.
The website is crosscheckmentalperformance.com.
Brandon Williams flew the F-15E Strike Eagle. He was an instructor pilot, an evaluator pilot, and a graduate of the Air Force Flight Safety School, which qualified him to run safety programs and conduct accident investigations. Think of it as the Air Force's version of the NTSB. He's also a current captain and line check pilot for a major airline. He spent decades operating in some of the highest stakes, highest pressure environments that aviation has to offer. And what he found when he started working with civilian flight schools surprised him. The military has a debrief culture. It's mandatory, it's structured, and it's treated as sacred. When that debrief door closes, in Brandon's words, the rank comes off. Everyone in the room is there to get better, nothing else. General aviation, not so much. And Brandon believes that gap is costing pilots in performance, in safety, and in the confidence that comes from actually understanding why you made the decisions you made. HumanFactors, debrief culture, root cause analysis. These aren't just military concepts. Brandon is on a mission to prove they belong in every flight school, every cockpit, and every high-stakes environment on the planet. Brandon Williams, welcome into the Future in Flight podcast.
Well, Shawn, first of all, thanks for having me here and doing this. I love doing this kind of format, so this is great. But AeroSummit's been outstanding. Just several aspects of it. Number one, the networking. So many industry leaders here, so many people in the business. Everyone, flight school owners, flight, vendors, suppliers, CFIs, just pilots, everyone here just trying to learn how do we get better. And like you said, all the value add that comes from just the conversations we have on the side, the contacts we're making, business is going to get done after this, making this industry better. And then, the panels, obviously. I mean, man, it's been just some phenomenal, get these experts we get them together on the stage and talk about a topic. An hour is just not enough time, but it's amazing, the content and the value bombs, if you will, that come out of that people can take away. So that's been my greatest part. I was on a panel on the main track yesterday. I've done a couple of the CFI panels. So just the conversations that come from that, and then extending. I mean, I know we were supposed to do this earlier, and the panel upstairs went longer. So just from the conversation. So that's just been the best part, is the networking, the meeting people, building relationships, and all the learning we've had has been great. And the beauty of it is, as you said, anybody in this industry loves aviation, loves flying. So just being around the industry is just great.
It's the most passionate industry. I
Absolutely.
would really put us up against any other industry. We have so many passionate people here living a dream, and those facilitating dreams like yourself, working with people to help unlock their potential and realize their dream. Tell us a little bit about what HumanFactors are, and then we'll talk about how we can implement those into the daily life.
Absolutely. So as you said, I was Air Force. I flew F-15Es. I was an instructor pilot, evaluator pilot, served in several leadership roles. And one of those things I did in the Air Force was I also went to the Air Force Flight Safety School. And so I became an Air Force Aviation Safety Officer. So I was qualified to run safety programs, qualified to do accident investigation. So kind of like the NTSB's version of the Air Force, if you will, qualified to do that. And what I learned from that, though, what that's all about, as most people listening to this probably know, aviation safety is all about human factors. And what that is what I take it as, and what I take to, like you said earlier, not just aviation, but to other high reliability industries, is understanding how humans think. So human factors, there's the engineering side of it, which aviation's, how we design our cockpits, how we design our cars, this mic, these chairs we're sitting in, all have human factors designed into them. But what I take is the human factors of understanding why we as humans make certain decisions. So how that environment affects us, whether it's mental, physical fatigue, poor communication, lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, all these things that drive human error. And as we know in aviation safety is all about how do we mitigate and reduce human error. You're never going to eliminate it, but how do we mitigate it? And so doing that, you have to understand human factors. And what that ties into me with what I do with flight schools, teaching, briefing, debriefing, CFI leadership development, is everything I've developed for the briefing and debriefing models, it's all based on human factors, like how we as humans learn, understanding why we make decisions. And that's how you do root cause analysis of why a pilot made a certain decision. Because at the end of the day, this industry is just like most other industries. No professional shows up saying, hey, I'm going to make a mistake today. I'm going to make an error today. It's always human factors and that are involved, that are contributing factors and many times root causes of those problems.
It sounds very scientific, and it sounds like something everybody can agree with. But oftentimes when it's delivered like that, there's an emotional component to it. People get very, very defensive, myself included, when A, I make a mistake, and B, when that's pointed out. Is that something that you see that there's maybe an embarrassment or some type of emotional reaction to the presentation of the human factors?
Oh, well, I mean, absolutely. And what you point to, kind of what you're getting into, is one of the biggest barriers to debriefing. Like I said, not just in aviation. One thing aviation has over other industries is at least we have what I call a debrief culture. I mean, at least it's part of aviation. The plan, brief, fly, debrief cycle, that's part of aviation. So even if we don't do it well, at least we know we're supposed to do it. Yeah. Other industries, that's not the case. Other industries, whether it be construction, shipping, healthcare, manufacturing, industries that look to aviation for how we do things, that idea is very foreign to them because of that reason. Because that is the biggest challenge to overcome. Again, human factors, our reptilian brain. We hear somebody talk about something we did wrong that's perceived as a threat. What do? Fight or flight kicks in. I'm going to shut down, or either I'm going to get angry, whether I know it or not. And so how do we overcome that? And so with the debrief, even with working with CFIs, you've got to give them ways on how you set that tone of accountability, I call it. So before you even go into the debrief, that's why my debrief model, the first step is set the tone. And I give techniques and ways to do that on how we're going to bring down those barriers to communication. Because at the end of the day, you're still a human, and you're still, but we got to be able to talk about, what happened, why it happened, whether it's good or bad, and how we're going to get better. And caging that debrief around the idea that it's purely about performance improvement. It's not about your individual evaluation, you as a person, but it's purely about your learning. It's purely, and that's where real CFIs and good flight schools make their money, is when the students understand that this is not me just, critiquing you. This is not me just throwing out all these things you did wrong, but it's how am I going to get you better? How am I going to give you lessons learned at the end of the day? But that's why you have to know how to debrief. That's why you have to know how human factors work.
Now, you mentioned your military background, and debrief culture is it's mandatory in military aviation. It's mandatory in the military is to debrief what went wrong. But it's not inherent so much in general aviation a lot. We see a lot of recreational pilots, a lot of GA who just don't review their flights like they should. Are you seeing that there is a real need to introduce these human performance factors and get more people on board with debrief culture, or do you see that that's pretty well squared away right now and happening?
100%, we have a huge gap on the general aviation civilian training side, which is the whole idea why I started doing this. Is when I started working, again, it was mainly safety leadership, working with other teams, high reliability industries outside of aviation, because they look to us for how we do things, whether it be checklist or crew resource management or how we mitigate human error. And so they started taking things we did. Well, when I started working flight school a few years ago, I was like, oh my gosh, we know this is going to happen, but these young CFIs, or most all CFIs, they've never been taught how to do it. We talk about post-flight critiques, we talk about doing a pre-flight and a post-flight, but nowhere in even the FAA's flight instructor handbooks is there anything that talks about how to do debriefing, how to do root cause analysis, how to do lessons learned. And to your point, how I was raised in aviation, most of my flying early on, being in the Air Force, being a fighter pilot, we held debrief to it was almost sacred. That, we went in that room, we shut the door. Obviously in the military, we were rank on our shoulders, but we had a saying that when that debrief door shuts, the rank comes off. And it's true, because you have to be able to go in a room and you have to be able to talk about your execution, what happened, why it happened, and how we're going to get better. But yes, there is a huge disconnect, and and it's not really anybody's fault. It's just been a cultural thing, and especially with flight schools, time is money, and I get it. You're running a business. You've got to be as efficient as you can. Well, my case for that, my value add is, number one, it's a safety buffer. Number two, it's your school's reputation. If students are learning and they feel like they're learning, that's good. Number three, though, solid debriefing and briefing, guess what? That makes your every flight hour more efficient. It makes more learning come out of every flight hour you do, because the learning really happens in the debrief. I mean, we debriefed on the way back, taxiing in. We debriefed. No, they already know what they did wrong. Okay, don't confuse awareness with learning and understanding, because you have to have that time where you come, even if it's just a few minutes, you got to have that time where you come back, you cement the learning, you dive into that root cause analysis. Because again, human factors, no one went out and intentionally made a mistake. Let's understand why we made that mistake, because that's the only way you get better. That's the only way you develop lessons learned.
And one of the things about aviation is that it's right there in the name, the pilot in command. He's a leader. Every pilot is a leader, and that speaks to crew resource management.
Yes.
You have to look around and you have to see what your crew, your team is capable of, and what they can do within the limits. And that is also a human factors topic right there. So talk a little bit about how crew resource management can be helpful in non-aviation industries.
Oh yeah, one of the things I take, that's a great topic, crew resource management and how we do that. And so I take examples, I'm also a major airline pilot, a captain of a major airline and a line check pilot. And so I'll take the idea that, yes, I have a team working with me. I have a first officer, flight attendants, I have a dispatcher, I have the maintenance, I have, the OCC, Operations Control Center I can get in touch with, I have the, rampers that are helping me get that airplane out. I've got so many resources to help me. So crew resource management is, how do we take those inputs, right? How do we set that tone where anyone can communicate, as a leader? But at the end of the day, as the captain, I still have 51% vote, and I'm still, the responsibility is going to fall on me. It's like I say, as soon as that door shuts and the parking brake's released, it's like I'm the mini CEO of this airplane. And, I'm going to take inputs, but at the end of the day, I have to be accountable and responsible for that. And it's all about accountability. And so I take that, like you said, how does that apply to other industries? Well, whether you're a small construction team, whether you're an operating team, a healthcare team, or as a nurse leader, whatever industry you're in, working in manufacturing with a small team, at the end of the day, how do you set up that tone? Going back to human factors, How do you do briefs? And how do you do debriefs so that your people learn? And how do you set that up? Because all these industries, they want to operate autonomously. We know that. You've got to be able to delegate down to your lowest frontline leaders. But in order to do that, they have to understand pre-resource management. Like, how do we how do we set that tone so that anyone feels like they can speak up? Because that's vital. That mutual support concept is what I talk a lot about, and how we do that and drive that peer accountability. Because in all these environments, the only way you're going to mitigate human error a lot of times is if you have those environments where someone feels like they can speak up and drive that mutual support.
I saw it in the session yesterday. There's a lot of understanding when you said creating a debrief culture where anybody can speak, where you have to have the freedom to be able to express yourself, and that just brings in confidence. When we're able to express ourselves, we're more confident, translates directly into the aircraft. We have safer pilots, and it translates directly into whatever other industry, which is great because this traverses industries, and it's aviation setting the bar high for everybody else again. I'll tell you, one of the things to talk about HumanFactors is, real quick, I had anger management issues, and it's one of the reasons I didn't fly, because when things go wrong in the cockpit, when things go wrong in aviation, there's no time for emotion. We need to... Okay, you can be angry at the electrical failure when you're on the ground.
Yes.
Troubleshoot. Let's go.
Yes.
And that was something that held me up for quite a while as a human.
Right.
Was anger issues. Do you ever come across that in your work at all?
Yep, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, when something goes wrong, or when it seems like in aviation, I always say it's not inherently dangerous, but it's woefully unforgiving. And so, like Sully said, the startle factor is a real thing. It is 100% a real thing. HumanFactors, when something goes wrong, bang, and we're not expecting it, human mind, because of how we're wired, we're going to try to figure out, we go to that tunnel vision survival mechanism that's built in our brains. The only problem is our brain doesn't realize we're not being chased by a saber-toothed tiger, but we're, just in an environment where we got to stay calm and cool.
Absolutely.
And so the technique I give whether it's flying, whether it's on the ground, whether it's anger management, whether it's any industry you're doing, something happens, feels like the place is falling apart. Great technique I always like to say, this goes back to my Air Force days, is we used to have this technique of hack the clock. First thing you do, hack the clock. What does this go back to? Flying these fighter aircraft I used to fly, almost all of them still had this old analog clocks in them. So you would really wind the clock, or you push a button to hack it, set it to 0. And so we used to always say, something goes wrong, well, first of all, maintain aircraft control. We'd always say that's the first thing, fly the airplane. But then before you start throwing switches, before you start, just hack the clock. And what that does, it's almost like a mental reset, a mental hijack, if you will, to kind of make your brain calm down a little bit, take a breath, now assess. So and by seeing that clock go to 0, it's almost, again, you're setting a stake in the ground. You're kind of seeing your mind, okay, go to 0, I have time. Airplane's probably not just going to blow up or fall apart right here, right? Yeah. Now, there are some emergencies where it's critical that you have to get their plane on the ground soon.
Sure.
But for the most part, something bad happens, startle factor, hack the clock, take a breath, assess. What do we have? And that kind of gets your mind out of that fight or flight or that kind of reptilian side of your brain, more of that rational thinking side of your brain. Is a great technique I like to give it to people.
That's fantastically said. That really is what aviation has, among the many things that aviation has given me, it's given me that, an understanding of how to address my anger. I'm not attacking it.
Yeah.
That's combative language. I'm addressing my startle factor, if you will, and that just, it helps it become a better aviator, become a better human.
Yes.
Now, if somebody's heard this and they're like, man, I want to become a better human, where can they go find you? Where can they go check out your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, BrandonWilliamsSpeaker.com is my website. I've got all kind of materials, videos out there. You can go check me out on there. As far as social media, the biggest one I'm on is LinkedIn. So Brandon Williams Speaker. If you just search that, you'll find me on there. And then Leadership Speaker Pilot. That's my Instagram and Facebook handles. So that's how you can find me out there. Again, I'm on all those. Most of one is I put most of my content on is out on LinkedIn. And then Leadership Speaker Pilot on YouTube as well. I have a small YouTube channel. It's growing, but it's very small. But it's out there. And then my website. So
really,
and then reach out to me as well. Email address, if you're okay with that. Brandon@BrandonWilliamsSpeaker.com. Brandon@BrandonWilliamsSpeaker.com. Reach out anytime. Feel free to send you any of my info, my briefing, debriefing guides, material, whatever.
Highly recommend it. The website is super helpful. I mean, you go to the website and there's so much value on there. It kind of speaks ahead of who you are. It speaks to who you are ahead of meeting you. Is it, man, this website is value driven. There's so much information there. that I bet the guy behind it is value-driven as well. And he is. It turns out that you are just pushing incredible value into the industry and in a really crucial place, talking about safety and human performance. So that's incredible. We're really excited to go back into session here in AeroSummit 2026. I know we've got some great sessions coming up, both in the CFI track, which I'm excited to check out. I haven't been up there yet. I have not been upstairs. I'm really
you
excited.
should. Yeah, I've done 2 sessions up there. It's great. And the conversations are just great that come out of that for the CFIs that are up there learning, and it's really good.
Check out maybe what human factors that you have that might need to be addressed. And then when you find him, go see Brandon and get some value from him, because really this is a guy just pushing a lot of value in, just like he has here on this podcast. Brandon, thanks for joining us on the Future in Flight podcast.
Thank you, Shawn. Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
The Future in Flight podcast and our friends at Aviation are bringing something revolutionary to AirVenture 2026. The Aviation and Future in Flight podcast Story Stop is an exciting, interactive experience featuring all your favorite aviation creators and friends. Details coming soon. Adriana Barrigan is a flight test engineer. She's also a founder, and she came to aviation the way a lot of us do, through a dream she refused to let go of. She's been on the show before, and if you caught that episode, you already know about FlyORKA, an app built to help student pilots take real ownership of their training progress. But she's been busy since then. The app has grown. The thinking behind it is sharpened, and she showed up to AeroSummit 2026 with something to say. Here's the number that frames everything Adriana is working on. The average student pilot wastes between $5,000 and $10,000 on flight training. Not because flight training is badly designed, because the process isn't visible. Because students don't know what's leaking, so they oftentimes can't stop the drain. Adriana's a flight test engineer, and in flight test, you don't guess. You establish clear objectives, execute deliberately, observe carefully, and reflect honestly. That discipline, that process, is exactly what she's brought into FlyORKA. And her argument is simple. If you understand the process, you're not just a better student, you're a more confident one. Adriana Barrigan, welcome back to the Future in Flight podcast.
Thank you for having me. The AeroSummit, first of all, has been packed with outstanding, extraordinary people. As a new founder, I got the privilege to meet a lot of founders, aviation founders, at a great party to kick off the AeroSummit. For me, meeting founders, entrepreneurs, and people that are really experts in all sorts of skills that I want to develop was just an outstanding opportunity to interact with so many founders. So that really stuck out for me. And other than that, coming from wanting to improve training outcomes, we've had 3 key people present here at the AeroSummit. Tammy Barlette with her mental performance training, Brandon Williams, who champions at debriefing and training culture, and Karen, chair of NAFI. So we've been talking about flight training and what's next. It's been a good
I say you
days.
have been just everywhere. You've had so many great conversations. You know, these events are built around the conversations that we have outside of the sessions. And I have seen you taking advantage of all of the networking and just really taking the opportunity to learn and, as you say, gather some additional skills that maybe you want to work on, which is kind of baffling to me that there are skills that you don't have because you are so accomplished. I mean, you're a flight test engineer, you're a founder, a developer, and just somebody who entered the space from a passionate, dreamlike way. And now you're passing that on through FlyORKA and through building the app and helping people to realize the magic of aviation and doing that through flight training. So for those that are unfamiliar with the FlyORKA app, tell us about it in general, and then we're going to talk about what's new.
Yeah, well, for pilots in training who want to become capable pilots without wasting money or delays, we provide an app to give them more control over their progress, improve step by step, and use training time well. Unlike training trackers or generic tools, we are all about focusing on the actions that move the needle so that you can progress faster.
That's a powerful statement, is focusing on the actions that actually move the needle, because a lot of training tools, many training tools, they give advice, and maybe from a generic perspective, but it's not honed advice that really I can take and then progress my training. So FlyORKA is not only identifying some of these things that need to be worked on, these skill points, but really putting that out there for the student to see. Now, how do they receive that information, and what is that consist of?
Yeah, so we make the flight training process visible, and what that means is that just the way we approach flights in the professional world, there is a process to flight training, and we are making that process visible. That process actually mimics what we do in flight test. When we go flight test, we establish very clear objectives. We execute on those objectives using time well. We recall everything. We go ahead and revisit the flight, looking to see if there is anything we can improve on the product. And it's no different to flight training. It's the same process, and what we're doing is making that process visible and something you can engage with, so that you can focus on the process, but not just as a stoic philosophy, like where you really understand the process, and that gives you confidence. It's not just Zen philosophy, let's focus on the process. No, like you understand the process, and therefore you are confident.
And that's the value, is really building the confidence of that student. If a student goes in to flight training more confident, they're going to be a better aviator. They're gonna pick up those skills faster. They're gonna pick them up in a way that they retain them better if they're more confident. And that's kind of what the training points in the app you're building really speaks to. So tell me about a specific way that a student can interact. Maybe give me a concrete example of, we identify this and then you can do this.
Yeah, well, we identified that most student pilots are overspending in flight training. The average waste is between $5,000 and over $10,000.
Wow.
Like people are paying twice as much just for their private pilot certificate. And what we are doing with the FlyORKA app is giving them a personal system to keep their learning continuous, because we took a look at the flight training process and we were seeing that at every step of the process, we saw a lot of waste. A lot of money, time and energy and effort leaking at every step in the process, in the flight training process. So what we're doing is giving the students a personal system to ensure that the important steps of the flight training process are not only taken care of, but that they are continuous. And by doing that, you close. If you think about a bucket with holes, you can fill that bucket with water and you are going to see everything draining everywhere. So what we are doing is eliminating those leaks by helping you understand the process. And in doing so, you basically know your enemy, right? Who is your enemy? Well, your enemy here is waste. Flight training is expensive, and waste is really your biggest enemy. It's not price per hour.
What an incredible way to empower people to not only continue their training on it and do it more efficiently, but for somebody looking to get into aviation and they see the cost of $10,000, $15,000 of just a PPL. And then there's this tool, FlyORKA, that can look at that and potentially help you identify skill gaps that will close the cost of that training and maybe lower it. That's empowering for an incredible amount of people. So making aviation more accessible is
through efficiency. Yeah, it's just like a space flight, I think SpaceX did an amazing job with making space flight accessible, and accessibility is all about optimizing for the payoff of efficiency. And when they were engineering all the rockets, they were really, really focused on the payoff of efficiency. And what's the payoff of efficiency? Well, that we can afford launching many rockets, not only one every several months or years, but many rockets every year.
You speak to maybe SpaceX and how they can shoot off more rockets. They can launch more rockets with efficiency and with lowering cost of efficiency. Whereas a student now maybe can reduce the cost of their flight training and
be more capable and
maybe add something like a tailwheel endorsement.
Yeah, basic aerobatics, or hey, just get your instrument ready, move on to the next level up.
FlyORKA is just a multifaceted app that adds so much into the industry. I want to talk really quickly, we've got about 5 minutes, about the debrief part. You mentioned reviewing the flight. Now, we heard a couple of great speakers. You mentioned them here at AeroSummit. We had Tammy Barlette and Brandon Williams, and they talked about debrief culture.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about debrief culture in general aviation.
I think the biggest issue right now is that for many years we have seen flight training as closing the gap between not being able to do something and being able to do something very well. And what that has created, focusing too much on whether you can do that thing well or not. And to give you an example, that means that you have a student who we all want to do well, but you have that unnecessary pressure on your shoulders to perform, to do that thing well, because the focus on flight training has been for many, many years on closing the gap between not being able to do something and being able to do that thing very well. And yes, we want to close the gap, but the problem that I see is that what I bring from flight test is the fact that when we approach flight test differently, instead of closing that gap, what we do is moving from not knowing to knowing. We move from the unknown to knowing, and we do that by through observation, through preparation, through risk assessment and reflection. And that's where learning happens, and that's when you get it. That's when you have aha moments. It's not when you are trying to prove yourself. So I say this is not about proving yourself, it's about improving yourself. And that's the biggest thing that I observe. People focusing too much on scoring, performance, checking the box. Were you able to do it or not? And for me, it's moving, shifting, going from that to what we do in flight test: observe, reflect, and move from keep pushing your envelope. Don't prove yourself, improve yourself.
Now we have about 60 seconds left. I want you to give one piece of advice, the best piece of advice that you can give to the students that want to improve flight training efficiency. One piece of advice.
Take ownership of your journey.
That is a powerful, powerful piece. Accountability is a wonderful thing, and it enables us to kind of drop that veil and see what maybe we can improve upon. And I tell you, talking about improving, Adriana, I didn't think it was possible to improve upon the FlyORKA app. You had such a great app. The first iteration was so good, and here you have done it. You have really honed it into just an incredible flight training tool. We're going to put the links down in the show notes for anybody that wants to go and check that out. Give us the where they can find you on the social media.
You can find it on flyorka.com with a K, and the app is available for both Apple and Android phones.
Fantastic. More accessibility. It's accessible to everybody, whether you use Apple or Android. Adriana Barrigan of FlyORKA, making flight training accessible and creating efficiencies and just really driving more value into the market. Thank you for being here on the Future in Flight podcast again.
My pleasure. Yeah.
3 conversations, 3 people who could have stopped after building impressive aviation careers and chose to keep going, to keep giving back. A fighter pilot who figured out that your mind matters as much as your stick and rudder skills. A safety officer who realized that the most dangerous gap in general aviation is the one between a flight and the debrief that should follow it. And a flight test engineer who built a tool to make sure that no student pilot has to waste thousands of dollars figuring out what they could have learned in the first place. What I love about events like AeroSummit and about this episode is that these aren't separate conversations. They're all saying the same thing from different angles. Know yourself, debrief honestly, take ownership of your progress. If you enjoyed today's episode, I've got some good news. We're not done with AeroSummit yet. There are 2 more episodes dropping soon in our Live from AeroSummit 2026 series. More conversations, more value, more of the people who are moving this industry forward. Make sure you subscribe so those land right in your feed the moment they drop. And speaking of subscribing, if this show's ever given you something worth taking into your next flight, do us a favor, leave us a review. It doesn't take long, and it matters more than you might think. Every review helps a future listener find this show. Every 5-star rating is a little runway for us to keep doing what we love. Links to everything from today's episode, Tammy at Crosscheck Mental Performance, Brandon at Brandon Williams Speaker, and Adriana at FlyORKA. All of it is waiting for you in the show notes. To Tammy, Brandon, and Adriana, thank you. Not just for sitting down with us, but for showing up to this industry and genuinely, consistently giving more than you take. That's the example we want to continue. Until next time, we'll see you out there and up there.